James, let's talk about the NHS treatment of kids questioning their gender. Wes Streeting was on Never Mind the Ballots last night, and he said to Harry Cole from The Sun that some of these treatments were scandalous.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, actually, the Labour response to this. And I think it's indicative of actually quite a big shift in both tone and policy from Labour.
I'll tell you what, if you're OK, we talk about tone, we talk about shift. This was a 360 or a 180, whatever it is. Have a watch, have a listen to Wes Streeting yesterday, my friend.
They ran a campaign saying trans women are women, get over it. Do you agree with that?
No, to the extent that, and I say this with some self-criticism and reflection, if you'd asked me a few years ago on this topic, I would have said trans men are men, trans women are women, some people are trans, get over it, let's move on, this is all blown out of proportion. And now I sort of sit and reflect and think, actually, there are lots of complexities and challenges.
Isn't that the problem, that leading
debate.
figures like yourself, and I'm not just singling you out, but leading figures like yourself were saying, get over it,
no,
when people were trying to raise the facts. So you regret,
I think
you have a regret.
I absolutely take the criticism on the chin.
It's really interesting, James, isn't it? I'll bring John in a minute. We said it in the last hour. Is this a politician who is doing what we want our politicians to do, which is to listen and understand? This is a very, very contentious debate, but one that needs to be had without fear of being called transphobic. Or is this a Labour Party doing whatever it needs to do to get elected?
Well, I think Labour have realised that they were maybe at risk of being out of step with the public on this, because a couple of years ago you would have Labour front benches regularly on the media struggling to answer a basic question like how would you define a woman, and getting into a bit of a pickle over that. And look, there has been pushback from many within the Labour Party against what Wes Streeting has said and the fact that he's come out so wholeheartedly and welcomed the findings of the Cass review. Momentum, remember them, very big in the Jeremy Corbyn days? They've come out and criticised Wes Streeting, thinking that he plays into, as they would say, a narrative of transphobia. But I think, to be clear, you know, the Cass review was not talking about, you know, somehow condoning transphobia or questioning people's right to transition. It was specifically addressing how do we treat children with gender dysphoria.
Absolutely.
And is it right to give them what are essentially puberty blockers to stop a very significant development in their biology? So it is really interesting how Labour have shifted on this, and I think it shows that they're serious about trying to get into government.
I think that's the point. If I could bring in John Boothman, Sunday Times columnist, just quickly, John, and we'll talk about Scotland in a minute. It's interesting, isn't it? The Cass report, I think the majority of people would say, is a balanced way of looking at something. Momentum jump up, you just said it. It's a narrative of transphobia. That's why we've got a problem, because people have been too scared to have the debate. Surely it's a good thing, John Boothman, isn't it?
It's taken us 4 years to get here, 4 years since this report was commissioned. I think she's done us all a favour. She's brought out an objective report. She's really rejected the extremes. And I think that's something that we should all welcome. You know, we are talking about, and if you look at what she said, the medicalisation of children with scant evidence that this is a good idea. I mean, it is pretty unbelievable. I was saying to people yesterday, it's like returning to a medieval debate between science and men in funny hats and red suits where their beliefs trump everything else. And the fact of the matter is, this is not where the public are. I think everybody's right this morning. This is Labour returning to the mainstream. They've got themselves into a bit of a mess over all of this. They've seen the Conservatives move, and now they're moving too.
Do you think there's a danger, John, that this report, as moderate as it is, could be weaponised by people who are transphobic and do want to push a kind of hateful agenda against trans people?
Look, this debate's going to continue. It's not going to go away. One of the things that's interesting about it, reasonable though it is that, you know, by saying that we want a more holistic approach, which I think any reasonable person would welcome, there needs to be more support for kids in this position. It's yet another demand that we're placing on the health service.
Well, I agree. There's other stuff, but can I just say, support, in my opinion, should not be medicalisation straight away. You could spend years having psychological help and counselling to understand this is a monumental decision. Sorry, I think her report has opened people's minds. We had you on specifically, well, because obviously you're great and you're cheap, to be fair, JB, but more importantly, Scottish hate crime. God, I have to calm down. Police in Scotland were swamped with thousands of anonymous complaints in the first week since your controversial new hate crime laws took effect. What the hell's going on? 7,000 complaints. Why? Because people didn't like what? What were they moaning about?
7,800 complaints, mostly from anonymous people, as a result of this new legislation. The legislation was introduced 3 years ago. We're only getting round to enforcing it now on the basis that it's too difficult to enforce. I mean, basically, the police have had to deal with an absolute slew of vexatious complaints, people complaining, giving their opinion anonymously, that they don't like the sort of things, for example, that J.K. Rowling said about a variety of issues, including trans issues on Twitter. They've concluded at the end of the day that only 240 of these amount to crimes. It's been a monumental waste of police time.
Like they've got nothing else to do. Like, you know, without being rude, this entire country, England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland, is decimated. We've got not enough policemen and women. We've got crime everywhere. What's going on?
Well, the police in Scotland have already said that they're not going to tackle low-level crimes like property theft. They're not going to tackle low-level crimes relating to, for example, people breaking into cars. And yet they've said that in this case, they're going to investigate every single complaint that's been made. Now, there's a report out this morning from Her Majesty's Inspectorate in Scotland talking about how police are burnt out, they're overburdened, there are 1,000 officers short in Scotland. This is not a good place. The Scottish Parliament itself, I mean, its whole legislative process has been called into question. We've had loads of bills now, half a dozen bills that have all been turned over as pretty poor legislation, some by the Supreme Court, others by the Scottish Court, including gender reform legislation. It's all a bit of a mess, and it's really, really affecting both the police badly and the reputation, as I said, of the Parliament.
I got slaughtered some time ago for slagging off Nicola Sturgeon, but I actually think the one thing that I have every right in saying is the genuine people of Scotland. This morning a report says that Labour is ahead of the SNP in Scotland politically and in the polls for the first time in I don't know how long. All those people who paid John Boothman their subscription and bought into what Nicola Sturgeon said was going to happen must feel really cheated as of today. Do you not think I'm right in that? Cheated.
I think you're absolutely right. We're talking about a situation where there's two polls in the last 24 hours. Really, this is the first time that Labour's been ahead in terms of percentage share of the vote since 2014. There's been a huge collapse over the past few years in the SNP's vote. You yourself referring to Nicola Sturgeon, it started really that drop before she left. It's continued under, well, a First Minister where misfortune follows them around. This week we've had even more problems in the SNP apart from that hate crime bill. You may have read yesterday that his brother-in-law was arrested for extortion and abduction, which is, you know, pretty astonishing news.
I never thought,
No,
just let me bring in James just very quickly, and I appreciate it. I never thought that Hamza Youssef, I nearly called him Yusuf, was going to be able to succeed because he was Sturgeon's lapdog.
Yeah, and it's really difficult. When you take over from someone, you've got two choices. You either embrace their legacy or you define yourself against them. And this is part of the problem Rishi Sunak's got. He actually has not come in and provided enough of a difference between what went before. He actually called out Liz Truss's economic policies when he ran for the Tory leadership. He never says that now, and if he did, he might be able to define himself more against her in the eyes of the voters. And Hamza Youssef has that problem because he was very close to Nicola Sturgeon.
John Boothman, brilliant. Could have done all morning with both of you. James Hanson, for now, thank you.